This is the last thing you want to see: your belongings on the curb, evicted because you couldn't pay the rent. It's been a financial struggle for many people during this pandemic, and housing is a hardship. But there is help, everyone. The city of New Orleans just extended its rental assistance program, which can cover up to 12 months of back rent and 3 months of future rent payments under limited circumstances. Applications are being accepted now through the website on your screen, ready.nola.gov, or you can go down to City Hall or call 504-658-4200 to apply. Now, our next guest for our special episode about the COVID crisis 1 year later is here to give us an update on that housing crisis. Please help me welcome back Andreanecia Morris, the Executive Director of Housing NOLA. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Malik, for having me. I'm so glad you guys are doing this.
Absolutely. We are glad you are back on as well. We were talking, before the segment started. It's unfortunate that you had to come back to talk about the housing crisis that we are still in, but you are here with some advice. Let's start with, it's interesting. We've had realtors on the show who have been telling us, oh, the housing market is great. The real estate market is hotter than ever. How can we have a housing crisis if the real estate market is so good right now?
So the real estate market is good only in very, fixed terms, meaning high-end real estate agents who are selling high-end properties, again, in the 300, 400, 500,000 range. Yeah, they're doing great. That's not the average New Orleanian. That's not the average working class person in the metro area. So this is, again, one of those trickle down pieces where it doesn't actually trickle down. So if you can afford to buy a $500,000 house, particularly if you're coming from a city that's a little more congested and you want to get out of that to come to someplace like New Orleans, it's fine. But if you make $7.25 an hour, if you are lucky enough to be working from home and you can't afford to buy a new house, this is not so great.
And it's really interesting because, we've been talking about a housing crisis even before the COVID-19 pandemic. But by housing crisis, let's break that down a little bit. Does a housing crisis mean people can't afford to buy homes, or are there not enough affordable housing options?
So in New Orleans, we have both. Normally you have one or the other, or shades of them. Unfortunately, this is the severity of what's happening in New Orleans. Both. You have people who make $40,000, $50,000 a year, which is good money in New Orleans, and they cannot afford to buy, again, because of how high the market is. And then you have folks who are working every day, even as essential workers. They don't make enough money, and there's just not enough housing that's affordable, despite the fact that there is vacancy in every corner of this city. There are high-end rental units that are sitting, landlords who have evicted because their tenants couldn't pay, or their lease term ended, and they can't find people who can afford to pay. This market is broken in a way that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge.
It's really interesting because, there has been an eviction moratorium that has been extended until the end of the month, March, and federal aid has started coming in to help. Why is that not enough to help people?
Well, one, the federal aid just took too long. It took 9 months before we got the first federal aid package passed. Last month, the city was able to get $25 million on what for New Orleans is the need was, we were forecasting needing at least $100 million. So we got a quarter of what's necessary. And we're hopeful that the city's going to get more money, that if the bills pass that are going to double that. But again, we still needed about $100 million. And again, these were our forecasts last year. That's why it's so important. And the eviction moratorium, like I mentioned earlier, landlords are able to evict for or end their lease terms even if the tenant can't pay. Even though the CDC's moratorium said we shouldn't be making anyone homeless, landlords are still able to get around that. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them recognize that you're risking people's lives by turning them out into the streets. Studies have shown that homelessness and housing insecurity has absolutely led to an increase in COVID infection and COVID-related deaths. So this is as serious as it gets, and it just took too long. We have not seen our elected officials put housing first, And that's why what we did last year wasn't good enough. We hope this year's efforts will close those gaps.
Absolutely, because there are gaps still for sure. I have a two-part question I want to ask you because I think it's so important. First things first. So people who are watching right now and they're saying, I want to help this crisis. How do they help? And then people who may be on the brink of becoming a part of this housing crisis, what advice do you have for them?
So if you want to help, we need naggers, and that's the big issue is that we've got to push our elected officials to put housing first. So you can join us at www.puthousingfirst.org, and we'll give you information. We'll send you alerts and emails so you know who to nag and when to nag. And so what I would suggest to homeowners who are worried, who have not been able to pay their mortgages, who are behind, who have not been able to get loan modifications, reach out to a home buyer counseling agency. There are a number. You can find them on our websites as well. There's some really great organizations here. Sit down with them, have them go over your finances with you, and they can also help you talk to your loan servicer, your mortgager. And renters, you've got to have a conversation with your landlords. There are some really great legal aid organizations out here who can help you do that, SLLS and LAFAC, who have put out some information for people to manage that conversation with their landlords. You've got to let them know what's happening, and you've got to know your rights.
You heard it there first, everyone. Andreanecia Morris, everyone, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And again, for more information about affordable housing, check out the website she has been mentioning, puthousingfirst.org, or follow them on social media at GNOHA, or call 504-224-8300. And don't forget, please, to see if you qualify for rental assistance, apply at New Orleans City Hall or online at ready.nola.gov, or give a call to 504-658-4200. We'll be right back.
I'm your neighbor, and my name